Yes, I know, I'm late again for another review on this channel, but yeah, better late than never, so let's just get straight into my review for Aquaman. So Aquaman is the 6th installment in the DCEU, directed by James Wan, of course starring Jason Momoa as the titular character of Aquaman, and we see him basically have to stop his brother King Orm from waging war between Atlantis and the underwater kingdoms and the surface world. And there was a lot riding on this movie because, of course, the DCEU is not in the best of states, especially after Justice League last year. It kind of left it in a little bit of a shambles. A lot of people were very disappointed about that movie, including myself. So I really didn't know how Aquaman was going to turn out. And the reason this review has taken so long is because I wanted to watch the film more than just the one time, because I really wanted to cement my feelings on the movie and have a better idea of how I really feel about this film. And after seeing the film twice in cinemas, I can say that this is easily my second favourite movie in the DCEU. I really enjoyed Aquaman. Now, it is not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination. I don't even think it's a great movie. It's very good, very, very enjoyable indeed, but I do not think it's a great movie. There are quite a few problems I do have with the film, but overall, I had an absolute blast with the movie, and it's definitely a step in the right direction for the DCEU. So when we get down to my positives, I think the main three characters that I really enjoyed in this film, especially for performance-wise as well, were definitely Aquaman, Mera, and Atlana. I just loved all of those characters. You know, Jason Momoa was great as Aquaman. I thought he was a very, very good leading man for this film, because I know a lot of people were questioning whether he would be a right fit to play Aquaman. People were still questioning him even after Justice League. I thought he was good in Justice League. But what they do with Aquaman here was so good. But they didn't just make him a one-note surfer bro like they tried to do in Justice League. They actually try and give him multiple dimensions. And I think that's because of the fact that the film is very light-hearted in a lot of aspects. And so you really get to see different aspects to Aquaman as a character. And I think Jason Momoa did a very good job. I thought he was very good on screen, very good presence. Physicality-wise, was great in the action sequences, and I really enjoyed him in the film. Amber Heard as Mera, I really liked as well. A very, very good accomplice to Jason Momoa. I thought their chemistry was okay, but I wasn't blown away by it. But I really liked her performance, and I thought Mera was easily one of the standout characters of the film. And then, of course, we have Atlana, played by Nicole Kidman, probably my favourite character in the film. I loved her performance in here. She's not in the film loads, but I really liked her screen presence, and I just really liked this. You really got this sense off of her that she was this sense of higher royalty, and just her performance in the film, and also her in the action sequences. As far as I could tell, that was her doing a lot of the action, and it looked very impressive, and I've really enjoyed her in this movie. Like I say, doesn't have a massive role in the film, but I do really like what she did with this character. I also really like the story that they have between Atlana and Tom Curry. They open the movie basically with these two, and they show their relationship. They show how the two of them met, how they fell in love, obviously had Arthur, and then obviously the Atlanteans, come after Atlanta, and she has to leave Tom. And I really, really liked that opening, and I loved their relationship. I really brought into it, and it was something that I never really thought I would get that connected to in the film, but I found myself really enjoying the actual story of it, and it really is the backbone of the entire movie. And the fact that it is as strong as it is and works as well as it does, I think is a real testament, because there's a lot of problems I do have with the film from script-wise, but from this aspect, I thought they absolutely nailed it, and this was easily one of the strongest elements of the script in the entire film. Also, I loved the costumes in this film. Some of the best costumes in all of the DCEU. I mean, Aquaman's costume that he gets later on in the film is fantastic. Mera's costume is great. Orm's costume is fantastic. My favourite, though, has to be Black Manta's. I mean, that is one of the hardest suits to translate to live action. I really thought this suit was going to really suck, but when I saw it in the first trailer and then getting to see it here in the full film, it looks brilliant. And although they don't use Black Manta as much as I would have liked, because I really did like him as a villain, I do wish we'd seen a bit more of him, but I really liked his suit, and I loved his motives that they set up in the film, and it definitely looks as if they will be using him again in a sequel, which I'm very excited and down for, and I really can't wait to see what they go with that. I also thought that the visuals of this movie were fantastic. I mean, when you've got someone like James Wan helming your film, it's always going to be a visual treat, and this film's no different. I thought that a lot of the visuals were fantastic. I mean, a lot of it was just so eye-catching, and especially how he mixes practical elements with CGI, I think is done very well, because a lot of this movie is very CGI heavy. I want to say about 90% of the film is CGI, but the fact that it looks as good as it does and as consistent as it does, I think is a real testament, and I really enjoyed pretty much every frame of the screen. There wasn't a bad shot in the entire film. I thought it all looked beautiful and brilliant. A lot of fantastic wide shots and tracking shots, utterly brilliant. And yeah, the lighting and the colour palettes used, phenomenal as well. And of course, the action. The action in this movie is non-stop, full throttle. It's easily the most stand-up part of the entire film. I was never bored with these action sequences, and it's because of the way that James Wan, like I said earlier, helms the action sequences, the way that he films them with all these tracking shots, and the way that shots are linked together. It's so brilliantly done, and the stunt work is fantastic. The visual effects added in are fantastic as well. I think this is probably, in my opinion, the best action done in the DCEU as a collective whole. I think this is better than Man of Steel. I think this is better than Justice League or any of the other DCEU films because of the way that it's filmed, and I was always engaged with what was happening. And it was so brilliantly well done. And I mean, I had a feeling that James Wan would do a very good job with the action because he did a fantastic job with it in, Furious 7. But here, I think he took it up to a bigger notch. And I think this is probably, the action here is even better than what he did in Furious 7. And my final positive has to go to the score of this movie. The score is fantastic. I just loved the kind of 80s synth vibe to the score. I really enjoyed that. The Arthur theme and the Black Manta theme are easily the two tracks that stand out the most to me. But yeah, the original score for this film I really liked. The licensed music I'm not as big on, apart from one song by Depeche Mode that pops up in the film. But there's one particular song by Mr. Pitbull that I hate in this film. Absolutely god-awful. But I'm not going to dwell on that because I really don't want to give that song more publicity than it deserves. But the original score itself, composed for the film, I thought was absolutely fantastic. Alright, so now we get on to the negatives with this movie, and I think the biggest one I have to bring up is that although this film is very enjoyable from an action standpoint, I mentioned this earlier when I talked about the Tom and Atlanta relationship, the script for the most part in this film I think is very, very borderline, average. There is nothing extraordinary about this script, really. There was no real radical left turn that really left me surprised. And I was never really shocked by anything. The script isn't one that necessarily takes risks. And I think that's my biggest disappointment with this film. I would have liked to have seen this movie try and take a few more risks than it ultimately did. I felt it played it out too safe. And the script wasn't something that I really, really gravitated towards. It certainly wasn't something in the sense of Wonder Woman, where I felt that movie had a very, very good script, especially in those first and second acts. I really, really did enjoy what that film was building with its storylines. Aquaman doesn't have that same, level of, high quality written within its story, and as a result, I didn't find myself as engaged with what was going on as I probably wished I was. But yeah, there were parts of the script that I did like. Obviously, like I said, the relationship between Tom and Atlanta I thought was fantastically well done. I thought Arthur's journey of going from this kind of reckless person who's rejecting Atlantis to at the end of the movie accepting his destiny, that kind of stuff's good. But I just feel like for the most part, the script didn't really feel very revolutionary, or it didn't really feel as if it was like, oh damn, this is fantastic script writing. It never really felt like that to me. It felt a little bit too safe in a lot of areas. I also think that at times the CGI does look a little bit bad. There's a few shots where you can definitely tell that it's not up to par with other shots in the film. But then again, I am willing to overlook this because, the film is 90% CGI. Even in Infinity War, a film that everyone raves on about, there are shots in that movie with CGI that don't look very, very good. So, I have to... Obviously, I have to list that as a negative because some of the shots did detract me from the film, but they are so minuscule to what the CGI, how well it is at times in the film, that I felt the need to bring it up because, for a film with a budget of 160 million, you do expect to look a bit more consistent than that. I also think that Ocean Master, or Orm, whilst I did enjoy him as a villain, I love Patrick Wilson's performance in the film, I wish that his motives were developed a little bit more. Now, I know what his motives were in this movie. He obviously wants to wage a war against the surface world because he's frustrated with the fact that the surface world have kind of came onto Earth after the Atlanteans, and they've obviously been polluting the ocean, and Orm is very upset about this, and he believes that there is a war coming, so he decides we have to take the fight to them first. I understand those motives, and I think they could be interesting. The problem is that I don't think the film explored this enough. We get one bit in the film where we see him chuck all of the pollution back up to the Earth, which I thought was really cool, but they never revisit that storyline again, and I wish we had have done. I think that would have really helped the script, and it would have really shown how the Earth views the Atlanteans, you know, and the fact that they were kind of treated as this myth. I really wanted to see more of that in this film, but like I said, we only really got that one scene in the movie. And I just wish we had a little bit more to explain it. Like I said, I still did like Orm as a villain. I just wish that his motives, some of them in particular, were just explained a little bit more. But him as a character and his performance-wise, I thought was great. But I just wish his motives were a little bit better explained. And also, like I said earlier, I think Black Panther, I would have liked to have seen a bit more of him in this film, especially with the way they set him up in the first act, with what they do with him and his father. I really wished we had seen more of him in this movie. But watching it a second time, I do kind of understand why they didn't want to use him loads in this film, because they definitely want to keep him for the sequel, because in all honesty, Orm and Black Manta are really the only two well-known Aquaman villains. The rest of them are rather obscure. So I can understand why they want to keep him for a sequel, and I'm definitely interested because I really liked his character in this movie. I think it's just the fan within me just wanted to see that little bit more with him. Also, there were a few jokes in this movie that didn't land. I mean, this is a film that definitely tries to go for comedy a lot of the time, and while a lot of the jokes did land for me, there were definitely quite a few where, you know, the film obviously is, you know, the character says a joke and there's a long pause where the audience is obviously, they're expecting them to laugh. In my 2 cinema screenings of the film that I went to, there were jokes where nobody laughed in both screenings. There were just jokes consistently that no one was laughing at. And comedy is a very subjective thing, but I just noticed that there were a lot of jokes in this film. And while I'd probably say about 70% of them landed, there were a decent amount that I didn't find to be as funny. And definitely some that I didn't laugh at. And I think that's just, like I say, just down to subjectiveness and how you perceive comedy and what you find to be comedic or not. I just found that there were jokes in this film that weren't very funny, but for the most part, I do think they worked on the whole. I just wish that there were a few that were a bit more refined, or if necessary, just take them out of the movie. But overall, I really enjoyed Aquaman. Like I said, it is not a great movie. I think there are many problems with the film from a script standpoint that stop me from calling it a great film. However, I do think this is the second best movie in the DCEU behind Wonder Woman. I did enjoy this more than Man of Steel, in my opinion. I'm not saying Man of Steel is a bad movie. I do enjoy Man of Steel. I just preferred Aquaman a bit more, and I find Aquaman far more rewatchable. So for a rating for Aquaman, I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. I did enjoy Aquaman. I don't think it's great. Like I said, script problems stop me from giving it that high a rating. For me to get a 9, you have to have a very solid script. And Aquaman, I think, just plays it a little bit too safe in some areas, but very enjoyable film. Loved the action sequences, the visuals, the performances. Like I said, it was just the script of some characters feeling a little bit underused, and other elements like that that just stopped me from giving it a 9 or a 10. But yeah, second best movie in the DCEU, far better than films like Justice League, BVS, and Suicide Squad. I definitely recommend going to watch this if you're someone who's dropped out of the DCEU and you want a nice fun movie to get back into it. I think Aquaman is the perfect re-entry point. So thank you all very much for watching my review of Aquaman. I know this is very late, but I really wanted to kind of cement my thoughts on this movie before I did a review for it. So let me know in the comment section down below what you thought about Aquaman. Did you enjoy this movie? Are you one of the people who didn't like this movie? Because I know there are quite a few, mentioning no names here, but yeah. Let me know all about that in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new, and share this video around with all your friends. Thank you all for watching, and I'll hope to see you all again in the next video. Goodbye.